Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Spirits Beside Us. And today I am so honored to have the wonderful Irene Weinberg with me. And she is so amazing. Irene is the author of one of the most amazing books, They Serve Bagels in Heaven. She's an author, a speaker, and a host of a top podcast worldwide. And from what I understand, she just got an incredible award, which we'll talk about. That podcast also is the top 2% in 3 million podcasts in 84 countries and growing. So she is really well renowned, and I love having her on. She's also, in her podcast, it's called Grief and Rebirth, Finding the Joy in Life, which is really something. It's all about healing and it's helping people, and that's really what we're all here to do. And she's also writing a book, or it's about to come out, called Good to the Last Drop, Embracing Your Life's Third Chapter. So she's very active. So I want to invite...
What a pleasure, Chris. It's kind of fun to have the shoe on the other foot, because I think I've interviewed you 2 or 3 times on the podcast.
Yeah, it is kind of fun to have the shoe on the other foot, isn't it?
So, thank you for bringing me out, telling everyone about what I'm doing. I have to say, Good to the Last Drop was actually a message that I received to do this book. And it's about people's third chapters in life, which I am, the first chapter being when you're growing up and you're a kid. And that's your first chapter with your school and your home and your family and all. Then you have your second chapter, which you're a second chapter guy, where you're establishing your career and community and whatever you're doing. And then we get to the third chapter where we're supposedly retired. But I have a feeling you'll be more of a retired guy like I am. Who wants to be retired? I mean, so like some people in retirement just don't seem to be like thinking, all right, it's time for me to get sick and die. Other people go into retirement going, well, okay, now what kind of legacy am I going to leave? What am I going to do for this last part? And how can I take care of myself good to the last drop?
Exactly.
So that's the premise of that book that's coming out soon.
Well, that sounds great. And it sounds very much the culture of Japan and lots of it in Asia, where that third chapter is often your best chapter. It's that wisdom that you have. It's that ability that you have. It's, that's why you see the average age in Asia often is so high, because they don't give up. They don't just say, okay, chapter's written, I'm gone, I'm off to the sunset. No, it's now I'm off. It's time to start again.
That's right. And it's a different mentality than in this country often, which is, you retire, you're over the hill, where those cultures respect the wisdom gained through age.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a bunch of stories, and every single person in this world, I would think, in their life journey, they've been through deaths, as you would know better than anyone. They've been through deaths. They've been through career changes. They've been through all different things. So how do these collective experiences add up for that third chapter? And that's what the book is about. Do you stay in the past, don't heal all your stuff, all your pain, all your wounds, and just sit there in your suffering till you cross over? Or do you heal and look at that as that's fed my current present and take that wisdom? And now what are you going to do with that for this remaining time? Are you going to be a role model? Are you going to, like one guy I interviewed literally lost a child and went through all this stuff. Now in his third chapter, he is leading grief support groups for men. So what a wonderful thing for a third chapter gig.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So you've got, I love your story, and I don't want to spoil it yet because it is so beautiful, so amazing. So let's understand where you came from. What was your childhood like? What was your upbringing like? Did you have, what kind of religious exposure did you have? Were you sort of like every day? How did your childhood begin? Let's start there.
I had a very dysfunctional childhood. I had a very painful childhood. I had a father who had polio when he was 5 years old, and he had all kinds of physical problems. He was a really angry guy. And basically, I found out later in life, I realized that my mother was a battered woman. So I had a very tough childhood growing up, and I was very controlled. I was a people pleaser. I was trying to survive and all of that. And I married my first husband, who was a little too much like my father, but I didn't know how to discern or anything. And then eventually life did its thing. And then we divorced, and I married my second husband, who was the love of my life. And I literally, and that without going into it, that'll tell you a ton. We ended up getting custody of both of his teenage children, and we raised my son. And we were married for about 18 years. We had a really, really, really happy marriage. And we had both been very unhappily married before. But we were not spiritual, Chris. We were very traditionally Jewish people. I learned that you go to a cemetery, you put a stone on the grave to mark the spot. You might say something to somebody, but who's listening? Who hears you? I had no idea. And I had a sister-in-law who fancied herself to be spiritual, and we thought she was crazy. We thought she was woo-woo crazy, and we weren't talking to her particularly when this amazing thing happened to me. We were skiers, and we had a ski house. You'll know where this is for your viewers who don't know the New York, New Jersey area. We used to ski at Hunter Mountain in the Catskills, and we had a place there. And that would be our thing to do in the wintertime. And it was October, 2 months before ski season began. And one day I'm washing dishes in my kitchen sink, and this kid who believes in none of this suddenly gets this message, this thought, that's not my thought. And it comes right into my head, and it says, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. And I looked around with the glass. I'm like, what the heck am I thinking? And it wasn't my thought. And I said, this is nuts. I brought him a glass of water. I kissed the top of his head. He was watching a Jets game on TV. And I thought I put it out of my mind. But Chris, you never forget something like that, right?
What were you thinking when that happened? What did it feel like? Were you like, oh my God, I've gone crazy?
I just thought
I got to go see a shrink.
The weirdest thing is that in the moment I thought, this is nuts. What am I thinking? But then I had a second thought, and I said, wow, if something ever did happen to Saul, he's impacted so many lives. A lot of lessons would be learned. So I kind of agreed with it, and then I kind of like, but this is nuts, and I put it out of my head. Okay. And just to give everyone a background, he was a very beloved real estate developer. You would know the town. He did a lot of development in Hoboken and in Jersey City and Bayonne and all of that area. And he had a very charismatic, loving personality. So the yuppies that he worked with and sold condos to, because he was taking factory buildings and converting them to condos and all, they called him Uncle Saulsy. And I'll tell you that for a reason during the interview, but they called him Uncle Saulsy. So he literally even had Saul Z on his license plate for his car because he was so beloved with what he did and all of that. And I helped him in, I used to be a buyer for Macy's, and I grew up being a violinist and all of that. And I had 2 children's stores and all that. But then I started, when we married, I helped him in his real estate business. And we were a great couple. We had a great time together. He was really the love of my life. We had such a good relationship, and we faced down a lot of challenges, like bringing up these kids and all these different things that had happened to us. So, we had a real bond, and we had an understanding. I grew up as a violinist, so I was very into culture, and he was a jock. He loved skiing, he loved baseball, he loved football and all that. So when we were dating, he said to me, you're perfect for me, but you don't ski. And I said to him, you know what, you're perfect for me, but you have no class. And he said, what does that mean?
Oh, no.
And I said, I'll make you a deal, Saul. I come from Florida, I said to him, I'll put those 2 sticks of wood on my feet. I'll take 1 trillion lessons. I will be skiing with you on those slopes, and I will go with you to your football games. I didn't even know what a down was yet, but you have to go with me if you're willing to do this, to ballet, symphony concerts, theater, and all that. And he grew. I said, your part's easier. I risk my life on a mountain, and you get to sit in an audience, and I'll nudge you if you're falling asleep. He grew to really love the music. He started identifying composers.
Wow.
It was fantastic. And I became an expert skier.
Huh.
And we really blended our worlds together. We had a blast.
That's great.
So when this happened, we had finished up my end of the bargain. We were done with the culture of the summer, and we were gearing up for ski season.
Okay.
Right? So I'm doing my thing, and I get this message, and I put it out of my mind, I think. And 2 months later, sure enough, we're on our way. It's the week before Christmas. We're on our way to the ski house for another lovely skiing weekend where we meet a lot of our ski friends and all. And at the end of the weekend, it was interesting. The night before, what I'm going to tell you that happened to us, the night before that happened, the accident happened, he said to me, I'm so lucky and thankful to have you in my life.
Oh.
It was really interesting. I didn't realize at that time that maybe that was his soul or his something making sure to give me that message.
Wow.
Because the next day, it was just what I was told. Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. So we're driving home from the ski house, and we're on the New York State Thruway. And we're on the thruway for about an hour and a half. And suddenly I felt the car go into a huge swerve. And I looked over at Saul, and he was sound asleep at the wheel. We were going 72 miles an hour on the thruway. And I called out to him, Saul. And he woke up, and he saw what was happening, and he went to pull the car out of the swerve. And as he did, we rose up into the air for the first of 4 flips, Chris. And I will never forget it. I was conscious through everything. And I pulled myself together. I'm a petite, short person, so I pulled myself together, and I remember taking off into the air, and we hit really hard 4 times on the right side. I had 4 serious operations all up and down the right side of my body from the accident, but I was conscious through everything. And as we hit the first time and took off the second time, I got another message that came into my head, and it said, he's not going to make it, you are.
Wow.
And then in this second flip, when we got to what you would look at as a clock, like as we were flipping to the 10 of moment to the 10 after, I suddenly left my body. Wow. I suddenly found myself surrounded in black. I didn't know what was going on, but I was still here. And I didn't know what was going on. I said, what's going on? And I was all encased in black. And then suddenly I felt myself go back into my body for the rest of that flip. We took off a 3rd time, flipped. We took off a 4th time, and we landed upside down in a ravine. And before I tell you this part of the story, I must say we held up traffic on that New York State Thruway for 2.5 hours. It was that bad an accident. And there were still pieces of my car on the road 6 months later.
6 months later.
So now we slide into this ravine. I'm all scrunched up in a ball, and I'm in my seatbelt, and I look over, and I'm upside down, and I look over at my husband. I go, Saul, are you okay? And indeed, what I was told had happened. I'm next to the shell of my husband, and I can see that he's gone. And today, I would say his beautiful persona, his personality was gone, but he wasn't gone. And I got in that moment, oh my God, we do go on. I got these messages. He must still be with me. All of this was coming in at me, and I see a helicopter land. And these 3 EMTs jumped out of the helicopter, and they began rocking my car back and forth to get it right side up onto the road. And once they accomplished that, one of them came to my car and stuck his hands through my shattered window. I will never forget it, Chris. Undid my seatbelt, turned me around, and started pulling me by my shoulders through the shattered window of my car. And as this was going on, a male voice, and maybe you can fill in some blanks for me about this, Chris, I don't know, but a male voice trumpeted into my head, and it said, be loving and kind to everyone. as they laid me on the side of the road. Now, I've been told that could have been Archangel Gabriel. I don't know. But here, now, my husband is gone next to me, and they're telling me to be loving and kind to everyone. And I don't know about you, but that would tend to change your cells as they're multiplying, in my view. All of a sudden, I was not consumed with myself. I knew that Saul had left his body. All of a sudden, my focus on everything was being loving. It was like I got a directive from heaven. So I'm saying to these EMTs, thank you for coming out. It's the weekend before Christmas. I really appreciate they're saying, you have a lot of, you have a real problem with, I had a torn artery in the bottom of my foot. I said, we're going to wrap a tourniquet around your foot. We're having this conversation. And they load me in a helicopter to take me to an emergency trauma center. And I continue, I'm so grateful for your help, because I was told to be loving and kind to everybody. Wow. So instead of screaming for myself, I just lost the love of my life. What the heck is going on and all that? I'm going, thank you so much. What's your name? They take me to the emergency trauma center. And I say to the nurses, thank you so much for helping me. And the doctor comes over and he says to me, the surgeon who's going to stitch up the bottom of my right foot. And he says to me, I need to tell you that your husband is gone. And I said to him, Doc, I'm the luckiest woman in the world that I had this man in my life. I said, I'm so blessed. Wow. And he said, would you like me to tell your children when they come? The police are calling your kids. And I said, you know what? I'd rather tell them. And, but could you stand by my side? Because I'm Jewish, I said, I could use a rabbi right now. He said, I happen to be the assistant rabbi in my synagogue. Look at how spirit works, Chris.
Gee, that's no coincidence there.
You're right. So I said, would you hold my hand as I tell each of the kids? But meanwhile, 3 months after this, Can I ask you a question?
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
The thing that fascinates me is like when you heard that trumpeting voice, that booming voice, I guess, A, what was going through your mind? And B, what made you follow this imperative when you're in the middle of massive trauma and distress? What was it that made you follow this 2 or 3 word phrase? You're like, oh yeah, okay, I can do that. What made you go that direction?
You know what they talk about in our spiritual world, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Chris, if something feels right to you, if you intuit, if something in your body, if it feels really right, and this was before I was really spiritual and I had this experience, but everything coming in, because they prepared me. I got Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. And here it's happening. I was like in the moment, and it felt right. Something was up. Something was going on. And I became, and then when I heard be loving and kind to everyone, I thought, oh my God, I'm getting a directive. And it somehow felt right. And I'll tell you how I knew later on it was validated. So that's what the other thing that I did that was really momentous for me was I got this message, be loving and kind to everyone, which was life-changing. But at the same time, I say on the earth plane, I said to myself as I was being pulled out of the car, I will get through this somehow because I have to show my son, I have to role model for my son that you can get hit by a grenade in life and still keep going. Saul was buried on my son's 21st birthday. Wow. And my son was 21 years old, and now I realized he had lost his father, and I knew that if I had to change, and in that moment, if I had to change my cells one by one, somehow I was going to get through this, because I was not going to give him the message that you can get, your life can get ruined in a moment. I wanted him to know that stuff was going to happen in his life too, and that there are ways to get through it. I didn't know how I was going to do it yet, but I mindseted that somehow I would move through this.
I
would get through it. And I guess the voice in my head reinforced that there was something up. So now after the hospital and all of that, now I'm in grieving hell, Chris. I mean, I'm home. I'm in a wheelchair. I have, people coming from the memorial services and all that jazz. There were 1,000 people at his funeral. He was very loved. I'm going through all of that, and I'm in grieving hell. And I get stuck with all these business problems. all these things going on, family issues, because we've got stepchildren and all that kind of thing and all that. What was this all about? And 6 weeks after the accident, it's amazing how spirit works. I'm just out of my wheelchair and I'm just starting to drive Saul's car because mine was completely totaled. And I get a call from my dry cleaner. And you know me by now. I talk to everybody. I'm very friendly. And every time I used to bring in my dry cleaning, we'd have a chat or whatever. And what's going on with your kids and your grandkids and all. Sure. And he called me and he said, Irene, I don't tell this to a lot of people, but I feel like you're very open-minded. Well, now I was, of course, much more open-minded from what was going on with me. Right. He said, and I want to share something with you. He said, 8 years ago, and my wife and I don't share this with a lot of people. He said, 8 years ago, my wife and I lost our oldest son to a drug overdose. Mm-hmm. And we were besides ourselves. And we went to grief therapists and counselors and all kinds of people, and no one could help us. Then someone told us that the soul goes on to the other side. He said, and we have communicated with our son through, and he named a bunch of, at the time, now we're talking, this all happened, the accident happened in 1997. So, and then he had, told me about a lot of these people he had to communicate with his son through. And he said, there's a new guy coming up who's going to be very famous one day. And he has a gallery for your viewers is like when everybody, and I'm sure you've done many of them, Chris, right? Where people get together. And you've done one for me on my podcast where people get together to hopefully get a message from their deceased loved ones. And then they're in a group. He said, I'm going to go to a gallery with this guy in 2 weeks. He said, would you like to come to me? This was, and I'm telling you for reason, come to me, which his home was like by 5, in Fairlawn, Chris, his home was like about 5 towns from me. And he said, and this gallery is going to be in Secaucus. So that was like another 5 or 6 towns away. Leave your car at my house. I'm telling you for a reason. And then I'll come into my car and I'll drive us to this gallery. Well, this famous medium one day was John Edward.
Oh, wow.
Before he was famous, there were only 35 people in the room. It was before voice recorders, so people would bring someone to take notes. And I had no idea what the heck what this was about, but I knew something was up. So I went to his house. I left my car at his house. I got in his car, and we went to the gallery, and John Edward greeted them and saw me and said, I don't even want to know your name. Go upstairs with all these people who were waiting. And literally 35 people, half of them were what they call sitters, and the other ones were taking notes. They were taking notes for them. And I was very nervous. I didn't know what to expect. And it was like Saul purposely gave me time to watch other messages coming through from other people. I'm getting a message from someone who says he shot himself in the head. Oh, that's my father. And, hanging pictures for Christmas. Oh, that's my mother and all this. And all of a sudden, John Edwards said, I'm getting a message from a guy and he's talking about Dr. Pepper. And I went to my dry cleaner, Joel. Oh my God, start writing. It was 15 years before he met me. Saul's brother, who was an advertising executive on Madison Avenue in New York City, put Saul's name in a Dr. Pepper commercial. Oh, wow. And the commercial was, Dr. Pepper's coming east from California. Let's talk to the man on the street, Saul Weinberg, about what he thinks about Dr. Pepper. And Saul used to laugh, not John Doe or Joe Smith. His brother had really put his name in the commercial. How did John Edward possibly know that? And it had happened 15 years before Saul even met me.
Wow.
And now for 40 minutes, in this gallery with other people, Saul takes the stand and he's like, messages. He's telling me he died in a different state than where you live. He died in New York. We lived in New Jersey. Who's Matt? That was my son. Who's Bruce? That was his son. On and on and on and on and on. And the kicker for 40 minutes worth, where John Edward even said to me, this is an old soul, this guy. I don't know if he would say that today. He said, boy, this guy has been around. He is so articulate. This guy's been around a long time. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time. But the thing that knocked it out of the park for me, Chris, I'm going to show you this, is he said, he's telling me you're driving his car with Saul Z on the license plate. Oh, my
gosh.
That was parked 6 towns away at my dry cleaner's house. How, and I know you get these messages also, how could he possibly know that.
No.
So now, from being nuts and this world is crazy, there's only one person I can call, my sister-in-law. And I call her up and I said, oh my God, I just heard from Saul. She said, thank God, because 2 weeks after the accident, he came through to me. And I said, why are you talking to me, Saul? We weren't talking when you died. And he said, because I thought you were crazy, but you're not. And I'm on the other side and I have to get some messages through to Irene. And he said she inherited 4 business deals. 3 will work out, 1 won't. And there was a message about each of the kids.
Wow.
Well, so all right, now I start to open up to other mediums and other people and all this. I can't tell my world because they would think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs like I did.
When you were going to this initial gallery reading, were you going in there skeptical? I mean, what were you initially thinking when you were going in there going, well, this is just a bunch of malarkey? What was your initial perception?
Well, the interesting thing about it was I knew, like I said, I knew something was up, but what this was. But when he called me, there was a spiritual bookstore that I had never gone into in my town. And as I walked into the bookstore, facing me right on was James Van Praagh, had just come out with his new book, Talking to Heaven. Oh, right. I said, what is this? And I felt compelled to get the book. And one of the messages that John Edwards said to me was, he's telling me that you read a special book to prepare for this evening.
Oh.
So isn't it amazing? How could he know that? So Saul knew that, of course. So what I didn't know what I was in for, but at least I opened my mind to reading this book and about what this was. So when I got to John Edward, I was nervous. I dressed more like I thought I had a date coming up. I did not know what this was about. But I had read enough of the book to say, okay, I'm just going to try to be open-minded to this experience, whatever it will be.
So the book opened the book kind of opened your mind to the possibility that something's out there, that something might. Okay, interesting.
You're right. So so that really, and that's why these books are so important that we write, because people can learn, as you've done. People can learn so much about this world even before they actually experience it or validate their experience. So now I start opening up, and all these people are telling me this other thing. I keep getting these messages, the same message from different people. He's telling me there's a divine plan and that you two have been soulmates and you have a lot to do together and you're going to work together from across the veil. I'm like, huh? But, at the time I was like, huh? But it was him. You know how I knew it was him? He described his toes through someone. He described the first meal we had together through someone. He described the outfit he was wearing the night he died through someone. I mean, he was giving me such undeniable, honey, I'm here, proof of that I'm here. Yeah. So I would do anything for him. And now I start getting a message, you're supposed to write a book.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, book? What book? I played the violin. I was a buyer for Macy's. I helped him in his real estate business. I took honors English in high school, but what book?
How can I write a book? I don't know anything about a book.
I don't know what to do. But it's him. And one thing leads to another, as you know, in this world. And my sister-in-law introduces me to a woman who can channel from the other side, and she starts channeling Saul, and I start asking him questions for this book.
Wow.
And so I asked him what it was like when he crossed over. What do they do about evil on the other side? I mean, I was learning all these things as I was asking him these questions. And the book is a love story. It talks about, he channeled some of our past lives and how I knew she was real. How I knew this was real, because I always had a healthy skepticism through everything.
Right.
She was Methodist. She had never heard a word of Hebrew in her life. And one day I'm sitting with her and she'd be channeling and she'd ask Saul a question. All of a sudden she'd start typing in her computer. Did I know all this was real? So one day she said to me, Irene, I'm asking him about if past lives you've shared. And he's telling me that you've been many different things in different lives. You've been Jewish in some lives, Christian in other lives. You've had all these experiences. But one of your first lives together, he was a rabbi in ancient Israel, and they had schools there called yeshivas, and you were a little boy you're a boy in this yeshiva. And she says, I'm asking him your name, and I'm getting the weirdest name. I don't get it. For this little boy in this yeshiva. And she said, it sounds like Yellow Tove. He keeps saying you were such a good little boy, and it sounds like Yellow Tove. I said, oh my God, Yellow Tove is Hebrew for a good little boy.
Oh my gosh.
Okay? So like, all right. Okay,
Yellow
Saul,
toe.
I believe you. Okay, I know it's you. Okay, how
That's
because she
great.
doesn't even know what she's saying, and she absolutely gives me that
Wow.
clue, that validation.
That's great.
So now we start writing the book. I come out with the book, and I think this is all that I have to do. And at the same time, I was working, and now I'm really getting into this world. For a while, I was a business manager for a medium, and I started really getting into this world. And I also helped to found a philanthropy for children in grief and things like that. So all of this is happening, and I'm out there with my book, and I think, okay, that's it. And then one day, I'm sitting right where you see me, and I get a message, podcast comes into my head. And I said, podcast? What's a podcast?
What's a podcast and why?
I said to this person, I was going, what's a podcast? She said, oh, I can help you do that. So now I'm thinking, they're telling me I'm supposed to have a podcast. It's my next step. And now I'm really open to this world. And I'm saying, who am I supposed to interview? So I thought about it. And when the accident happened, and I had made this vow to myself, which I had mentioned to you, that as they were pulling me out of the car, I also thought to myself, I will get through this and role model for my son that you can get hit by a grenade in life and still keep going. So one of the things that I did was I started working with a life transition coach.
Oh.
Now I opened up to energy healing. So I was working with an energy healer because I was in tremendous pain. I mean, when I tell you kicking and screaming on the floor from grief oh my God, I was with the waves of grief and everything. But I was on some level with the mediumship, how he kept coming through. It gave me a comfort that it was not all over, that I was going to be with him again, that he was aware of what was going on in my life, that I was getting help in some way. So even though on the physical plane, I was grieving, I call grief in my way. I call it like you've had this person swimming through your cells all these lives. You love this person so much, and it's all of a sudden, it's like a withdrawal because they're not physically in your presence anymore. It's so painful. But on an emotional level, I did have some kind of comfort from the mediumship readings that I was getting, where he kept coming through. Honey, it's me. You want to know about my toes? Honey, you want to know about the last meal you made me? Blah, blah, blah. And all of this was going on.
They make bagels up here that are better than New York.
Oh, well, right. Well, the bagels in heaven thing, he channeled that. He even channeled, you know this better than anyone. You get a life review when you cross over.
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
And then they acclimate you when you cross over. You get with whatever you've learned here that you're comfortable with before you see the bigger picture. Well, his mother met him on the other side. His mother had passed or transitioned when he was 16 years old from cancer. And he told the story. He channeled to me for the book that his mother met him when he crossed over, and that the first visual, the first experience he had was his mother, and he had bagels and coffee in heaven. Talk about touching base.
Touching about what you know.
Right?
That's acclimating.
Right? People will often ask me, and did they come with lox and cream cheese? I say, anything you want. Anything you want. So, and then, of course, she changed into the creator when he started getting acclimated and started getting his life review and all of that. But that's who greeted him. His mother greeted him. And so now I'm so open to all these things, and I do the book. And now I thought I was done. Okay, I did my job. Now I get podcasts. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to interview, because I worked with the life transition coach, spiritual healers, as mediums saved my life, honestly. Oh my God, to the knowledge that he was not gone from me. And then also, because of all the trauma I'd been through and how I was working so hard to get to the other side of it for my son, and who knows what else is coming down the pike. So I said, I'm going to interview grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, which that's where you big time fit in, Chris, and people who have been through really traumatic, difficult experiences in their lives, healed them, and moved through and transformed into the rest of their lives. And I'm very passionate about healing because of this dysfunctional childhood that I had, where I carried this backpack of pain and my stories from all the injustices and things that had been done to me in my life. When I healed, I was able to drop that backpack. And it opened me up to being able to move forward, because I've learned that if you're grieving on a scale of 1 to 10, whatever it is for this person with your history, that's kind of in the appropriate arena. But if your grief is like over into the 15, 20, 25 more, you're over the top, mired in the swamp of it, you usually have issues from your past that are exacerbating, because it's unresolved issues from your past that's exacerbating. Like if you were abandoned as a child, now you feel your deceased loved one has abandoned you. So where if you had a really solid childhood and then you never had that issue, you're really grieving your deceased loved one. But if you've had all these unhealed things, now it's multiplied.
Right.
With what you're experiencing. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to encourage people that they can drop their baggage of pain. And here are all these ways and all these people who can help them to drop that pain and to know that you can move on. You don't have to stay stuck in that, even though can't even imagine how you're ever going to move from it, but that you can.
So it sounds like the knowledge, not only that you can heal, but you can move beyond it, because you've been talking about healing, so much that it sounds like that's what's so critical, is it to know that you can heal. There are ways, and that
there are ways
move beyond it.
Absolutely. You're a big piece of a lot of people's healing, because the validation, and then they can choose to look and deal with their other issues. I have to tell people, and I tell people all the time, the most amazing thing one of the most amazing things in the story is how I vowed that somehow I would get through it. And 4 years after the accident, my son said to me, Mom, there's been nothing worse than seeing you in total despair, and nothing better than seeing you be able to have joy again.
Oh, wow. That's profound. That's very powerful.
Right? So that has been the impetus for me to say to people, yeah, you're in the depths of hell, the grief, everything you're going through, but you can heal and you can experience joy again, and you can and also be loving and kind to everyone. Meant me too. I took that everyone is me too. And I tell people that you're not going to be good in the world for what you can do and any contributions you can make unless you're also very loving to yourself, which could mean healing your stuff, taking care of yourself physically, emotionally.
Right.
So many of us, we're people pleasers, especially when we're empaths and all. We're taking care of everyone in our lives and we come last.
Right.
And what good are you for all the people in your life if you also don't take care of yourself? What are you role modeling?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of you're in an airplane and the flight attendants say before they take off, if you get an oxygen mask, you put it over your own mouth and nose first, then give it to somebody else.
Exactly. So that's what's happened. And I have to say that I'm having a blast. I'm having here I am in the 7th chapter, the 7th decade of my life.
Yep.
I know I only look 22, but I'm in the 7th decade of my life.
You're still a teenager.
Right? That was the impetus also for Good to the Last Drop, because so many people will say to me, you're such a role model. You embrace life. You're doing all these wonderful things. You're taking good care of yourself. I want to grow up. I want to get older like you. Yeah. So I thought, let me bring out other people's stories who are doing this and start to change the paradigm and the thought that just because you're getting older doesn't mean it's over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
You can still have an impact.
What would you say? There are a lot of people who are hesitant, or they have a fear of the great unknown. They're not quite sure about the continuity of life. What would you say? Based on everything that you've learned, about that the great unknown. What's out there. What would you say to people who are afraid of it or concerned about it?
I'd say you're going through a lot in your life because you chose to come in and learn lessons, and this is school, and you're going to go home. And the way that, to be honest with you, I'm not afraid of dying anymore from what I've experienced. I'm afraid of not living life good to the last drop.
Oh.
But what I would say to them is I had an experience at a gallery with a medium and we were in Vermont. We were opening up a new territory in Vermont. I had discovered this medium, and for a while I represented her. And we walked into a hotel room, which I know you've experienced this in your world, Chris. We walked into a hotel room. There were about 35 people there. It was in Vermont. I didn't know a single person. We had been invited. And as we walked in, there was a girl sobbing, like maybe in her mid-20s. I mean, loudly sobbing in the front row of this gallery. And as the medium walked to the front of the gallery, she said to the girl, "I see a father figure behind you. And he's telling me that the night before he unexpectedly died, the two of you had a horrible fight and you called each other terrible names."
Oh, no.
And he is saying that he's so glad you came to this, and he is so sorry for what he said to you. He did not mean that. And that he got a life review, and he is so, so sorry. The difference in this young woman, this is why mediumship can be so healing. The difference in this young woman before she got that message and after she got that message was like literally life-changing. And I tell people how I know this is real. That imprint of how you treat people in your life, they don't care how much money you made when you get to the other side. They want to know how you expressed love, what you did, how you impacted people in your life and all that in this lifetime. That imprint, that last word said, that's why I say the last thing Saul said to me basically the night before he transitioned was, "I'm so happy and I'm so lucky and thankful to have you in my life."
Oh, wow.
That was what he took to the other side. This man took to the other side these awful names he called his daughter, these horrible things he called his daughter, and he got the message and was able to come through and apologize to her and take care of it. A lot of people can't do that, or they don't do that, so they take the pain that they've caused others or whatever, they take it to the other side. So that's how I know. That's why I want to tell people that I know for sure that we go to the other side. I know for sure that the imprint of your choices in this life, though there's no judgment there, but your choices will follow you over. And that's why you're here in school, to learn how to make different choices and to learn these lessons.
All the lessons, exactly. And a lot of times I also get, even for those people who do think about, the afterlife, or they think about, the beyond, oftentimes I'll get questions about heaven or hell. What's your understanding of that? Is that something that you've got a new perspective on? Is it there, or is it more something that we create in our own awareness as a result of it? What's your thought?
I've learned a lot about that too. We land according to your vibration of how you lived your life and what you did. You kind of land, there's no hell. The hell is in your mind. You kind of create it yourself. If that's what you create, that's where you go. But it's not real. And that we land on different planes, and I have a story about that. We land on different planes according to what our vibration was. So like Saul, who was obviously, like John Edwards said, he's been around the block a lot, and a very evolved guy. He landed on a higher plane than other people might, like this man who abused his daughter the night before he died. That he didn't land on such a high plane, though he still got his life review, and maybe it helped him when he was able to say those things to his daughter. But my favorite story about this, Chris, is my parents, as I've said, did not have a great marriage. My father was a control freak, and my mother was a battered woman. And she used to make a joke, "If your father's meeting me when I cross over, I'm not going." I mean, that was like the family joke.
I love it.
So now, of course, I communicate with a medium after she transitions, and I get the message, "Yay, I made it." And then I asked her through this medium, "So, Mom, did you see Dad?" Because I remember she always used to say, and I had been told through a medium that my grandfather, her father, met her, not my father. And she said, "He's in a different place than I am." In other words, he was in a few planes, I guess, below her. She had landed in a higher plane. And she said, "I'll get to him when I'm ready." And then eventually I understand that they did get together and reconcile. And the interesting thing was, I never, through any medium ever, wanted to talk to my father. I mean, that was how painful my childhood was. Recently, he's been coming through telling me that his life review was like he was getting pistol whipped when he had to experience what he did to my mother and his children. And he had been healing. They have healing places there. He had been healing, and he came through to apologize to me and say, Irene, I'm so sorry, like this man had done. I'm so sorry. I understand now. Look at me as a stepping stone because you learned all this from what happened, and now look what you're doing. I'm really proud of you. You've overcome every obstacle that I unconsciously put in your path. So I know that there's no hell because my father didn't go to hell. He just landed on a lower plane, right? And eventually he did enough healing to be able to come through and become accountable for what had happened. And you know what that allowed me to do, Chris? It happened about 2 years ago.
What's that?
My backpack slid right off my back.
Oh, that's great.
That was the end of that because now I totally let it go. I was able to not forgive him that it was okay what he did, but I could let go of the story of what had happened. It's my story of what was, not what is.
Sounds like he helped you heal.
He did. He
That's great.
did. And I could not have done that without a medium communicating that to me.
That's
right?
great. Yeah.
You know, so I'm at peace. And that's what I want for everyone listening to your podcast and everyone listening to mine. I want that. That's our message. You don't have to stay stuck.
Right. And that's sort of like the big question. It's like, after everything that you've gone through, after everything you've experienced, all the challenges you've had, what would you say would be the biggest series of lessons that you've had? I mean, you're saying you don't have to be stuck. You can heal. You can move on. You can be at peace. What are some of the biggest takeaways that you've had?
My biggest takeaway is that every single person listening to this podcast on this planet is as precious and important as anyone else in your life, whether they've achieved fame or not. We're all part of a collective, and we all have our own mission and our own job to do. And the healthier you get, the more you work to drop that backpack, the more you can be a role model for other people in this life to also enhance their vibration and to make it a better world and to drop the pain. And that be loving and kind to everyone. Be loving and kind to yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of your issues. Find the right people to help you leave your swamp. You don't have to stay in that drama.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it sounds like you're talking about the purpose of your life, even the soul purpose. It's like what would you say? What's your understanding of a soul purpose? I mean, it sounds like that kind of is what your purpose is on life.
I see you as a healer. So many people come to you and they get this wonderful healing for what you do. I see my role. My sole purpose is I'm a bridge to you. I'm a bridge to healers. I'm a bridge to people who are giving the message. They're not coming. People tell me my presence is healing because how I've healed and where I am. But I don't see myself per se as a healer. I see myself as a messenger, as a bridge to healing. And I think that is my sole purpose.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. A messenger. That makes a lot of sense. A messenger to direct people where they need to go and to find. Yeah, I get a lot of emails from people. Who should I talk to about this? Who should I go to? What should I do about that? And I tell them, you know what? Listen to AYXYZ podcast, I think, because they have to make their own choices. But like with us, now people are finding out so much about me. They're certainly going to listen to your podcast, which is wonderful. And they may choose, hey, I'm going to add Grief and Rebirth to my list, and I can listen to that too. Sure.
However they get the messages, however they can get enlightened and raise their vibration and start to learn and get those healing. We're telling them you can change your story. You can heal. There are options for you. And your loved ones are absolutely still in your life. I love how you talk about spirits around us, because I know they are all around us.
Always. Absolutely.
And they know everything going on. My mother and my husband actually have two different ways they tell me with a pendulum that they love me. And the pendulum swings in a different way from each one of them. And I know they're around me all the time and part of my life. And then I'm going to be with them again.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. It's very magnetic.
It's a wonderful thing.
You and Saul had most amazing relationship. It sounds like you had, it sounds like you two were the proverbial soulmates. Do you believe in soulmates? What do you think soulmates are? Do they exist?
Well, I asked Saul about that, and They Serve Bagels in Heaven. He said there are many different kinds of soulmates, that there are some soulmates like we were. Well, first of all, we weren't always married in every lifetime, and I had lifetimes that he was not with me. I had a lifetime where I was a little boy, and he was my teacher in ancient Israel. So we have different roles that we play. He told me that there are friend soulmates, that there are lover soulmates, that there are all different kinds of soulmates. It's not just limited to one person. But we come in often with a family, like with a soul group, and that we take different roles. And obviously, Saul and I have been lovers, married, and all in many different lifetimes. So we have this thread that has continued through our lives, but we have other people who are also soulmates in different ways to us. But if you call it, through friendship or different ways, we connect with different people. And sometimes people come in and they go, I'll play this role in this lifetime. I'm going to take this part because this is the lesson that we've decided you need to learn or keep working on in this lifetime. So, one of the lifetimes that is in my book, They Serve Bagels in Heaven, I said, Saul, I don't want you in this lifetime. I need to have a lifetime where I am learning how to function and develop certain parts of my soul without you. And so there are those kinds of things that happen. Now, in this lifetime, think about this. He had to go, and I've been told I could have gone with him. The amazing thing was, I mentioned to you before we started that when we were dating, an astrologer said we were going to die together in a car accident. And here, all those years later, I had that out-of-body thing that happened. I've been told I was given a choice. I could stay with him on the other side, or there was work for me to do here. And I chose to come back
and do the work.
For my son. I knew there was work for me to do and all that. So I'm experiencing this part of my lifetime solo. I'm together with him, but not in the physical. Way. And he's encouraged me. If another man came into my life and all, he would have no problem at all, because it's all about being loved, and they're not jealous over there. Yeah, they're not invested enough that way over there.
There's no ego, so there's no jealousy.
No, there's no, it's about love. Right. It's about how you express love, how you receive love. That's the bottom line.
Exactly. It's so amazing when you begin to think about how we express it, and then it's we're trying to get the peace, we're trying to get this understanding, we're trying to get the healing, and then as we start to open up, we start to feel that connection. And it sounds like with you've been rapidly gaining more and more of the understanding, to the point where it's now overflowing from you, that you can just give that peace, give that understanding, give that ability and learning how to love and to heal, and to give that knowledge to other people.
Absolutely.
That's what you've got. You've got the knowledge. Right.
And I tell people there's no judgment on the other side. That's another thing that I've learned. You came here to learn lessons. Some of us flunk the course, but they're not going to, you may end up in the lower plane, but you're not going, there's no judgment. There's no hell. Hey, this is, you'll have to come back, I guess, to learn the lesson you didn't master it in this lifetime.
So I always say, do your
healing. Do you really want to come through with the same turkeys over and over and over again?
It's like, do you want to fail kindergarten and go back to kindergarten and do it all over again? I'd rather go back and keep doing more.
So, like, even though it takes a lot of courage to change and grow, but the rewards are tremendous. It's like I asked a therapist once, why don't more people go to therapy? And she said to me, because it takes tremendous courage to face your pain and face your wounds and to change.
Right. Well,
and not everybody wants to do that.
It's like that old joke. So, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light bulb's got to really want to change.
Yes. That's perfect.
That's what it's all about. It's all about the intention. It's all about the inside. We have to want it so badly that we're willing to face it, that we're willing to experience it, that we're willing to feel that discomfort, that pain, that inner challenge, because it's hidden inside for a reason, because we don't want to face it. Once you get it out there, put it to the light of the day, you're like, oh, okay. And then that's when it starts to melt away.
Right.
So,
and it's hard, but it's so rewarding.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, for me, for the first time in my life, to be totally at peace with what happened with my father, to know my mother is fine, to know that I will be with Saul again, to have this connection, to know you. I mean, this is the other perk. I mean, to meet the most wonderful people in this world.
Yeah, just being able to learn them, find them, and direct others to them. That's part of your journey.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
and it brings me a lot of joy, to be honest with you. It really, and I see people in my world who are so depressed, and they're one man, I met him in the elevator of my building recently, and he said, life is hell and life is this. No. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, he's missing the whole point. And this is how he's going out one day, thinking about not being grateful for anything.
It's like you almost want to reach out and just sort of say, let me help you.
Right. Well, there was a part of me that wanted to reach out and say, let me help you. And there was another part of me that wanted to say, smarten up over here. Come on.
Exactly. Slap. All right. Let me slap you upside the head and wake you up. You need some help there.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, maybe you need some coffee too.
Bagel. Bagel.
That's what it is. A bagel and coffee. That's what you need. That's a bagel with coffee. Saul would be right there. He'd be like, oh, absolutely. I'll help him with that. Well, let me ask you, as you think about a person who might be in that state where they need healing, or they feel like they need to either change their lives or improve their lives, or they just want to get to their best self, right? What would you say would be the single most most important recommendation you could have for a person who's listening in today?
Well, I think that everyone has a different path. I think everyone is called in a different way. For me, I had to start by starting. So when I started in with therapy, with life transition coaching and all that, she helped me. She said, I'm going to help you try to function in the world without Saul. And I'm crying, and I don't want to function in the world without Saul. But that was one piece. Then when I went to mediums, that was another piece that helped me in such a huge way. Then I worked with an energy healer who was able to tell me, you have this and this trauma from a past life that we can heal and help you with. Mm-hmm. So my thing is, what is your intuition telling you? Where do you need to begin? And then you can begin. Like that's why for me on my podcast, I have all these healing choices on my website. So if they're looking for a medium, they can listen to your interview, Chris. They can say, hey, this is the guy for me. This is who I need to see. And then there are coaches and there are healers and different kinds of people. But the main and the big message I have for people also is, if someone doesn't feel right for you, if it's a medium, if it's a therapist, if it's a healer, go out the door and find someone else. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You do not have to be wedded to that person. Right. One of the first things I was taught was, I want you to go in new doors, test your intuition, see how you feel about it, give it a shot. But if it doesn't feel right for you, walk back out that door. Right. You can always, instead of going to someone, not having a good experience and say, this thing is lousy, this is not for me, you can say, I think I need a second opinion. I think I need to try someone else, or I'm going to go somewhere else or try a different modality. And as you seek it out and as you open up, I think a person gets led step by step to where they need to go. But you have to open the door.
Right. You got to start somewhere. It's like the saying, put the toe in the water, and if the water feels good, put a second toe in the water, and then a third, and so on and so on. But if you feel the water's too cold, take it out. Try again.
Exactly. But it's a blessing. I mean, for me, my first step was that session with John Edward, going to a medium. That opened me up. Oh my gosh, it's Saul. Oh my God, the license plate. Oh my God. And that opened the door. And then I had some missteps and I learned lessons from it, and I knew I could walk out that door.
Wow. There you go. Wow. That's amazing. Well, you've been doing so much, good work and healing and helping other people, and that's been coming out on your podcast. And now you've got, I think, an incredible award in 2 categories or something. Tell me about what you've been awarded with in your podcast.
Thank you for asking about that. I'm very humbled by it, actually. There's an international organization that is called Speak Up Talk Radio, and they check out people's podcasts and they listen to different episodes, and it's a panel of 6 people. And they listen to 2 or 3 or 4 episodes, each one of them, from different podcasts that apply to have their podcast considered for this award. And I was blown away because I was awarded first place in 2 categories. One was for motivation and inspiration, and the other was for spirituality. And I thought, my God, and it was by all this panel of judges and all of that. And it's international. So I guess my podcast was up against other podcasts from all over the world. My God. And I'm very, 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 very honored to have received this recognition.
That's wonderful. It's I knew your podcast was already in the top 2% or something in all the 80 different countries, but then on top of that, you're also getting these 2 awards in 2 categories. That's amazing. That says a lot about the power that you've got, and that Spirit truly was right in that they were the ones getting behind you, poking you, saying you got to do this podcast, because we want you to go help other people. You're going to be our vessel for healing.
Exactly. It's really, and when you look at your life, and I know that this is true for you too. If you look through your trajectory of your life, you kind of see how the different things that happen to you seem to be part of a puzzle that fit together as you, and bring you to the next step. Right. So even the dysfunction and the things that I went through in my childhood, the tough first marriage, the all these experiences that I've had, make me more able to relate to people as I interview them and relate to what they're talking about. So 100%. It's almost like I see now from the beginning, assuming this was my sole purpose that I came into, who knew? But they knew that I was kind of taken along, that I needed to have these experiences to wind up doing what I'm doing.
Exactly. The analogy I always use, it's kind of like a defense attorney. A defense attorney cannot be a good defense attorney unless he's first been a prosecutor, because the defense attorney knows the direction that's going to happen. Or the same thing as a doctor. Doctor can't really be a great doctor unless he's already been through the pain and problems that all of his patients have been there, because he's already experienced it.
That's so true, Chris. That is so true.
It's all about life experiences.
Yeah.
Well, this is wonderful, Irene. Thank you so much for coming on the episode today and sharing with us everything that you've gone through, all the bright stars that you've become, that you're helping people. So this is beautiful. So I know a lot of people probably want to get in contact with you. How can someone get in contact with you if they're either interested to learn more, or for you to act as the bridge that you mentioned?
As I am. Get on my website, Irene Weinberg, WEINBERG .com. It's got everything there. I'm also on YouTube. I'm on Spotify. I'm on, if you want to catch the podcast, wherever it is, I'm there. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere. But the main place you could start is just click right onto my website. And I know that Chris will have links for to make it easier for you to, for everything. And I just want to thank you, Chris, because you're such a great guy. And I just really appreciate this opportunity to share with you, tell you my story.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's truly an honor having, a person like you who has, written books, has all these awards, have all these connections with so many people. I just feel the old saying, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy.
But you are worthy.
Wow.
You are worthy. That's the whole message I have for them. You are worthy. Clean up your stuff and start expressing what you're supposed to do. And look at those people who are hurting you in your life as well. They're not enlightened. They don't understand.
There we go.
They're not conscious.
Well, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Irene, thank you so much. I'm so excited. And, everything that we've been talking about, all of your links, all of your books, everything that we've been discussing today, everything's going to be in the show notes. So if you're interested in seeing anything and getting more details and all the nitty gritty, it's definitely all in the show notes. So thank you for listening to the show, and I can't wait to see you next week. And with that, we'll close the show. And this is Chris Lippincott. I'm sending you love and light. Until next time, bye for now.